Think about the difference between hard news and opinion columns. Hard news is expected to be strictly factual, while opinion pieces are meant to offer interpretations. It's important what parallels exist between censorship and lynching. This paper can become your biggest rank booster. People often seek validation through likes, shares, and comments, which highlights a broader societal concerns around acceptance and approval. For instance, platforms like Instagram often emphasize visual aesthetics, leading people to post only the best aspect of their lives. This creates an environment where social validation is sought, reflecting anxieties about appearances, successes, and the social status of people. Hello all. The festive season is here, and these are the classic slump months when people get off track and lose touch with their studies. But this is exactly when you can turn things around, because this is the time and this could be your golden period for your essay preparation. While others are enjoying, you could build your writing skills and sharpen your thought processes. Because as soon as these slump months would end, everyone will start rushing for their prelims prep. But by then, you will have to juggle between your optional prelims and mains with very little time left in your hand. But if you start working now on the essay, this paper can become your biggest rank booster. So it is better to start now than to rush later. So if you really want to nail the essay paper, the first step is to build a strong foundation by spotting the micro themes UPSC loves to test. It's not just about knowing the big topics, it is about understanding these specific areas as UPSC keeps coming back to these themes. And today we're starting things off with one such micro theme, that is media, cinema, and literature. It is a big one because it connects directly with the society, culture, and even politics. We'll go through how to tackle these essays on this particular theme, look at the past year questions, and figure out the best way to approach the topics on this theme. So here are some previously asked questions. Now, if you glance through the topics, UPSC has consistently focused on the influence and responsibility of media in governance and the responsibility of media in democracy. For example, if you look at these two questions, these are on the same lines. Now, this highlights how important it is to understand the ethical role of media as well, because they're asking about the good governance aspect. Now, if you look at the 2019 question, the biased media is a real threat to Indian democracy. Now, this emphasizes media's power in shaping political narratives also, and how the biased media could impact and threaten the ethos of democracy. Now, it is clear that understanding the balance between media freedom and responsibility is very crucial here. Now, the previous year questions also covered mass media and cultural evasion. So, the impact of media on cultural change is another recurring theme here. Now, if you look at the topic, how has satellite television brought about cultural change in Indian mindset? This indicates that UPSC wants you to explore media's influence on identity, values, and traditions. Now, if you look at the question of 2011, that is, does Indian cinema shape our popular culture or merely reflects it? Here, again, this is where you need to critically analyze that does media just need to mirror the society, or is it actually driving a cultural change? And in 2014, is sting operation and invasion on privacy? So here again, this topic touches on ethical journalism. It's about questioning the boundaries of investigative reporting and whether it violates the privacy. UPSC expects you to explore the balance between the right to information and respecting a person's personal privacy. The misinterpretation and misuse of freedom, asked in 1998. is again a topic that we need to ponder upon. So we need to understand that media freedom comes with the responsibility of using it wisely. You need to consider how freedom of expression can be balanced with accountability, especially in a diverse country like ours. Now, if you look at the recent trend, and the question here, the social media is triggering the fear of missing out amongst the youth, precipitating depression and loneliness. A very recent question asked in 2024. So the question is clearly about FOMO and its impact on youth. Now, this clearly shows a shift towards understanding the psychological and social effect of digital platforms. UPSC wants you to engage thoughtfully with how digital media affects the youth, especially when it comes to mental health. Now again, if you look at the topic, poets are the unacknowledged legislators of the world. Here as well, this topic highlights the influence of literature. UPSC recognizes the power of writers and poems in shaping societal thought. This explains that you should be able to connect their influence to the public discourse. To wrap up, when you're preparing for this micro theme, don't just focus on what media does, but you need to focus on how it impacts the culture, politics, and individual mindsets. Understand the evolution from traditional to the digital media, and be ready to discuss the ethical issues that come along all of these topics. Also remember that literature also plays a significant role in shaping the society, so don't overlook it. This approach will not only help you to write strong essays on media, cinema, and literature, but also give you a solid base to tackle over other themes. Now that we have covered the PYQs and trends around the media, cinema, and literature theme, here's what's next. Under each of these themes, I've put together some quotes that could potentially become essay questions. These quotes will help you get a sense of how UPSC frames their questions and what kind of content you should develop to tackle these sort of themes here. So we will be breaking down the topics here and discuss how to approach these topics and develop the content and arguments that you need to build for a strong and structured essay. So as we go through each of the theme, keep an open mind. The goal here is not just to memorize information, but to understand how to think critically about these topics and structure your thoughts effectively. So the first topic that we have here is that journalism is the first draft of history. This phrase highlights the critical role journalism plays in recording events as they happen and provide an initial narrative that shapes historical understanding. So, in order to understand this statement, what I have done is that I have broken down the keywords of the topic here and framed certain questions. Now, framing these questions will actually help you understand and cover the topic holistically. So the first question that arises here is that what does it mean to say that journalism is the first draft of the history? So it really means is that journalism captures event as they unfold, because as it happens, journalism covers the event in real time. Now, the real-time reporting is the only thing that provides us an initial narrative for historical records. And it offers also the real-time interpretation of the current events. So that is why we say that journalism is the first draft of history, because the first source of information that we're getting as the events unfold there is through reporting and journalism. For example, consider the media coverage of events like the fall of Berlin Wall, or India's emergency period, or the COVID-19 pandemic for that matter. These reports form an initial understanding and shape the long-term historical narrative for us. The initial narrative might evolve over time as more information comes to light, but that first journalistic support or account is crucial for shaping the public perception. Now think about the role of technology in modern journalism, like live streaming, social media updates, and citizen journalism. Now all of these models allow the information to spread faster than even ever before. This immediacy adds to the significance of journalism as it provides real-time access to the events, making it even more influential in forming the first impression of history. Now coming to the next aspect of it, that is, how does journalism shape the way history is recorded? How is it that the journalists or the reporters are able to shape the history in the way they want? Now, because they record events for future generations and frame the public understanding of significant moments. Now, this actually influences how history is remembered and taught, because we only remember what we have heard and what the journalists and the media has shown us. So that is why journalism is able to shape the way history is recorded. For example, consider the portrayal of national heroes in Indian media versus the global media. The way freedom fighters are framed in our textbooks and in our journalism can alter the public memory, impacting how generations perceive their importance. Now coming to the next question, that what are the challenges of journalism being the first draft of history? So what are the roadblocks or challenges or hurdles that a journalist face while reporting, or like how the first draft of history is molded? So in reporting, there always a threat and a chance of subjectivity and bias in the reporting. So as humans bring their own perspectives and biases into their reporting, so sometimes even unintentionally, this can lead to skewed presentations of events. Now, limited time for in-depth analysis. Journalism often happens in real time, which means that there is limited time for deep analysis. So again, there is a chance of twisting the facts or lack of in-depth reporting here. Next up is risk of inaccuracy and spreading misinformation. So in the rush to break the news, there is always a risk of reporting unverified information. We have seen the similar situation like during the early reporting of the COVID-19 pandemic, or even political events where initial reports had to be corrected. These challenges highlight the importance of journalism. Now, journalists must balance the speed with accuracy and ensure that their biases don't overshadow the truth. So it is important to understand that the role of media organizations here, pressure from political or corporate entities can even influence the newsrooms that leads to biased reporting. Now we have to understand this dynamic, because when analyzing the historical narratives presented by different media sources. So coming to the next question, that is, why is accuracy and ethics essential in journalism for its historical impact? Now first up is that ensuring truthful accounts for future generation. So that is why ethics and accuracy is very important, so that our future generations can get the truthful accounts and not something subjective and biased reporting. The other point here is that avoiding sensationalism and maintaining objectivity while reporting is very important, and to avoid the distortion of facts. Next up is promoting fairness and integrity in reporting. Upholding journalistic ethics not only builds trust but also sets a standard for future media professionals. Fairness in reporting, giving voice to all sides of story, is key to preserve the democratic role of journalism. Consider the Watergate scandal as an example, where responsible journalism played a pivotal role in political accountability. On the other hand, incidents like the reporting on weapons of mass destruction during the Iraq War highlight the dangers of misinformation and the importance of cross-checking sources. In today's digital age, where information is abundant and often unchecked, ethics becomes even more critical. With the rise of AI generated news and bots, distinguishing the real and verified journalism from fake news is a challenge that future journalists and historians must navigate. To wrap up, journalism as the first draft of history is both a privilege and a responsibility. While it provides an invaluable initial record for events, it must be practiced with caution, integrity, and ethics to ensure it serves as its role effectively. Moving on to the next topic. The next topic here is news is what someone wants suppressed. This idea that news is what someone wants suppressed is critical because it highlights the reality about journalism. Often, the most important stories are those that powerful entities do not want the public to know. We'll explore why this happens, the consequences, and how suppressed information can be uncovered. So, if we have to break down this topic, the first question in point should be, what does it mean to say that news is what someone wants suppressed? When we talk about news as being something that is suppressed, we're referring to the idea that powerful individual institutions or even governments sometimes often try to hide inconvenient truths. This could include anything from political corruption to corporate scandals. The very act of journalism is to uncover these truths and bring them into public light. By doing so, journalists challenge these entities and often hold them accountable, which is why they say that sometimes some journalists face significant resistance or even censorship. For example, if you think of how journalists risk their lives, expose corruption in authoritarian regimes, or reveal hidden truths about the public health crisis that governments might prefer to keep under the wraps or hidden. So here is the role, and that is why news is something that someone wants suppressed. So consider the role of leaks and whistleblowers in contemporary journalism. Stories like the Panama Papers or Edward Snowden's revelations about mass surveillance are perfect examples of news that was actively suppressed by powerful entities before they actually got uncovered in the public. Now, coming up to the next question, that why do people and institutions want to suppress news? So, most oftenly, they do so to protect their reputations and to avoid scandal and maintain their power. And they won't be held accountable for whatever news that they want to be suppressed. And they also do this to prevent public outrage or resistance. For politicians, avoiding scandals is crucial because to their careers, while corporations may suppress news to prevent economic backlash. To prevent public outrage and resistance again is an important point here because governments and powerful organizations may suppress information to prevent mass mobilization or unrest. This is especially prevalent in authoritarian regimes where controlling the flow of information is a means of maintaining control over the population. An example of this is censorship during elections, where media outlets are pressured to withhold negative stories about certain political figures. This suppression may manipulate the democratic process by keeping the voters uninformed. So this again reinforces the idea here that news is something that someone wants suppressed. So if we think about environmental news suppression, large corporations often try to hide the extent of pollution they cause to avoid regulatory actions and even public protests. Highlighting these motives adds depth to your essay when discussing why news suppression occurs. Now, moving on to the next question. What are the consequences of news suppression? So the first and foremost consequence is that it limits public awareness and informed decision making. When crucial information is hidden, people cannot make well-informed choices, affecting everything from election outcomes to public health and safety. It also erodes trust in institutions and reinforces power imbalances. Because if people realize that information is intentionally withheld, it creates mistrust in media, government, and even the corporation. This trust deficit further deepens the power imbalances as only a select few control the narrative. For example, when severity of environmental hazards like oil spills is downplayed, public distrust in both media and the responsible corporations grows when the truth finally emerges. Understanding the long-term impact of news suppression is very important here. For example, repeated incidents of censorship or information suppression in democracies can lead to a rise in alternative media or underground journalism, as seen historically during India's emergency period. Now, coming to the next question, that how can suppressed news be uncovered? So the first way for the news to be uncovered is supporting investigative journalism and journalistic freedom to avoid unnecessary censorship. And the second point here that could be included is protecting the whistleblowers and promoting media literacy so that the audience is also educated enough to form their own opinions by multiple sources rather than just relying on one source or one media house. Think about organizations like WikiLeaks or investigative journalism platforms like The Wire in India, which often work on uncovering stories that mainstream media might avoid due to political or corporate pressures. Digital media and independent journalism have become vital uncovering suppressed news, especially in countries where mainstream media faces censorship. Platforms like social media allow stories to gain traction even when traditional outlets are restricted. Here, citizen journalism also comes into play. Understanding this dynamic adds depth to your essays when discussing the modern challenges and solutions in journalism. Now, let us move to the next topic, that is, the duty of a journalist is to report facts, not to explain them. So, what is the duty of a journalist? The journalist should report facts and not explain these facts to the audience. So, what exactly this means is we'll be discussing further. So, the first question here is, what is the primary duty of a journalist? So, the primary duty of a journalist is to gather and report facts accurately as it is, and to provide an unbiased and objective information to the public. As we have discussed earlier, this is a primary duty of journalist when the journalist is acting ethically and following all the media ethics. And what does it mean to report facts in journalism? So by facts, here the term facts essentially means is presenting verified and factual information without adding their personal opinion into it, avoiding subjective interpretations and letting audience form their own conclusions rather than you explaining these facts and passing on some of the subjectivity and bias within you. So this should be avoided. Next up is, why should journalists avoid explaining the facts? So journalists should avoid explaining the facts because this would prevent bias and distortion of the story, ensuring the integrity and neutrality of journalism, and allowing the public to interpret the information based on their own knowledge and their perspective. So think about the difference between hard news and opinion columns. Hard news is expected to be strictly factual, while opinion pieces are meant to offer interpretations. It's important for the journalist to differentiate between these roles clearly to maintain the trust of their audience. Now, today, with the rise of digital media, the line between reporting and commentary can become blurred. Social media platforms often mix facts with opinions, making it challenging for the audiences to discern objective reporting. Highlighting this distinction in your essay shows an understanding of modern media dynamics. Now, moving on to the next question, that when does explaining facts become problematic? It becomes problematic when personal opinions or interpretations overshadow the actual facts that was the basis of your story. If journalists add personal interpretations, it can shift the focus from the facts to with their own perspective, which might not align with the reality. Second up, it becomes problematic when it influences the public perception and leads to biased reporting, because it also compromises the media ethics of unbiased reporting. It creates a misleading narrative, especially if the journalist's opinion is not based on comprehensive research. For instance, news reports during election campaigns where interpretations of candidates' motives can influence the voter opinions. If presented without a balanced view, it can even sway the public perceptions unfairly. In the age of 24/7 news cycles, reporters are often pressured to fill the airtime with analysis rather than simply reporting facts. This can lead to speculation being presented as a fact, which compromises the objectivity and credibility of journalism as a profession. Now, the next question is that how can journalism maintain its objectivity? This can be done by sticking to factual reporting without injecting personal bias. Journalists should focus on presenting information without injecting personal biases, even when covering controversial topics. The emphasis should be on the facts of what happened, who was involved, and the verifiable outcomes only. The other option to maintain objectivity is by fact checking and using reliable sources and upholding ethical standards of impartiality and accuracy. For example, respected media organizations often have fact-checking departments dedicated to verifying every detail before publication. Upholding such standards is essential in maintaining the public trust. Consider the importance of journalistic guidelines such as those set by Press Council of India or by global standards like those of International Federation of Journalists. Adhering to these principles help us to maintain journalism's credibility and ensures that the primary focus remains on factual reporting. By understanding that the duty of journalists is to report facts and not to interpret them or to explain them, we grasp the significance of maintaining objectivity in media. This objectivity is the foundation of trust between the public and the media. Now, let us move to the next topic, which is censorship is to art as lynching is to justice. Now, this analogy draws a powerful comparison between censorship and violence, equating the suppression of art to the injustice of lynching. So, the first question that should have been formed here is, what does the statement imply about censorship? So basically, censorship stifles creativity and freedom of expression in the same way that lynching stifles justice. It portrays censorship as a violent act, not physically, but it portrays censorship as a violent act, not physically but intellectually and artistically, that prevents voices from being heard. Just as lynching is an unlawful act against an individual's right to justice, censorship is a coercive act against the fundamental right to artistic expression and the freedom to share ideas. For example, think how certain films, books, or artworks are banned or are heavily edited in various countries to align with the political or societal norms, effectively silencing the diverse voices. This analogy serves to emphasize the severity of censorship. It is not just a simple act of banning content, it's a broader attack on the freedom to express and share ideas, which is essential for the development of society. Drawing such parallels in your essays add depth and emotional resonance to your argument. Now, moving on to the next question here, that is, how does censorship harm art? It harms it by suppressing new and challenging ideas or by limiting the diversity in artistic voices and perspectives. It also prevents audience from accessing thought-provoking content. For example, in authoritarian regimes, literature or films that criticize the government or explore sensitive social issues are often banned. This not only limits the artistic expression but also deprives the society of important critiques and reflections. Consider the global impact, how censorship has led to exile or silencing of many renowned artists in India as well, who have faced bans. In discussing censorship, connecting historical and contemporary examples add credibility and context to your essay. Now, moving on to the next question, what parallels exist between censorship and lynching? So, firstly, both are acts of oppression that silence dissent. Just as lynching is an act of violence aimed at suppressing justice and creating fear, censorship suppresses dissenting voices in art, creating a culture of fear among artists and creators. Next up, they distort the natural processes of creativity and justice. Both censorship and lynching distort organic processes, justice in the case of lynching and creativity in the case of censorship. They interrupt the natural flow of expression and truth seeking. For example, repressive periods in history, such as the McCarthy era in the US, artists and writers were blacklisted and censored for their political views. This is not only restricted artistic freedom but also curtailed societal progress by silencing important views. Now, moving on to the next question, what are the consequences of censorship in the society? So, firstly, diminished cultural growth and intellectual stagnation. When artistic freedom is curtailed, it limits the cultural diversity and innovation, leading to stagnation. Societies that censor art often find themselves intellectually and culturally repressive. Next up, suppression of societal critique and innovation. Art often acts as a mirror reflecting and critiquing society. Without this mirror, societies lose a critical lens through which they can reflect on and improve themselves. For example, the suppression of controversial art during the times of social upheaval can prevent necessary conversations that would otherwise contribute to societal evolution, such as discussion around racial, gender, or economic inequalities. Linking the consequences of censorship to the real world examples like the censorship of LGBTQ literature in certain countries provides a tangible illustration of how censorship stifles not just art but also the social progress. Including such details make your arguments even more impactful. Now, the next question is that how can society protect art from the censorship? This can be done by upholding freedom of speech and artistic expression. So societies must prioritize legal protections that uphold the freedom of speech and expression, ensuring that artists have the right to create without the fear of censorship. Next up, we can promote open platforms for diverse voices and perspectives. Encouraging platforms that give space to marginalized voices can help counter the effects of censorship. Supporting independent media, alternative art spaces, and open access platforms ensures that diverse narratives are reaching the public. Also, this can be done by resisting censorship through legal frameworks and public discourse. So, legal mechanisms like constitutional protections for free speech play a critical role in resisting censorship. Additionally, public support and discourse around the importance of artistic freedom can create a collective resistance against censorship. Take, for example, the legal battles fought by filmmakers and writers against the ban of their work. Such efforts not only protect individual pieces of art but also set precedents that reinforces the right to artistic expression. Engaging with global examples such as the legal battles over banned books in India illustrates the importance of strong legal and societal framework to protect art from suppression. It shows that safeguarding artistic expression requires both institutional support and public advocacy. Censorship, like any form of oppression, has far-reaching consequences not just for the individual artist but the society as a whole. So when we censor art, we deny the society the opportunity for growth, critique, and evolution. Now, moving on to the next topic. The press, like fire, is an excellent servant but a terrible master. This analogy highlights the dual nature of press. It can be a powerful tool for good when regulated, but it also can become dangerous if it is left unchecked. So in this regard, the first question that has been framed here is that how is the press like a servant? So the press serves as an essential source of information for the public, offering valuable insights into current affairs, policies, and the global events. So it is a servant because it provides valuable information to the public, and it acts as a watchdog, holding the power accountable, and it also supports democracy by informing the citizens. For example, during elections, the press provides a platform for candidates to present their agendas and for analysts to break down the policies, ensuring that the electorate is informed. Think about historic examples like the role of press during India's independence movement, where newspapers served as a platform for spreading ideas and mobilizing the public in their own languages. Such instances show how the press, when functioning as a servant, can contribute to the significant social and political change. Now, moving on to the next question, that is, how can a press become a terrible master? So it becomes a terrible master when the media starts spreading misinformation or sensationalize the facts. It also becomes a terrible master when it manipulates the public opinion for political and corporate interests, and it stops acting as a watchdog. And due to this, it loses objectivity and becomes biased or controlled by a political or a corporate entity. An example of this is when media houses report selectively to favor certain political parties, influencing public opinion rather than providing unbiased information. Such behavior can lead to distrust and skepticism about the media intentions. A similar topic we had even discussed earlier, that news is something that someone wants to be suppressed. And this can only happen when media starts acting on the whims and fancies of these political and corporate entities and loses its objectivity. Now, the next question here is that what are the consequences of unregulated press? So, the consequences is that the trust in media of the public erodes. So, it leads to public distrust. Next up is that it polarizes and it can even cause social unrest among the society, and it undermines the democratic processes because it stops acting as the fourth pillar. Referencing specific incidents where media manipulation has led to the public referencing specific incidents where media manipulation has led to public unrest, such as during the protests or riots, provides a tangible connection to the consequences of an unregulated press. Citing these examples helps us underscore the press's responsibility that it holds. Now, the last question here is that how can press maintain its role as a responsible servant? So it can do so by upholding ethical journalism and fact-based reporting, as we have discussed earlier as well, and by ensuring the independence from these political and corporate influences. This can also be done by promoting media literacy. Now, moving on to the next topic. Investigative journalism is the oxygen of democracy. Now, first question here that needs to be framed is that what exactly is investigative journalism? So, investigative journalism involves in-depth reporting that goes beyond surface level stories to uncover hidden truth. It often is used to expose corruption, injustice, and abuses of power in the government, corporations, or any other institution. So, this type of journalism requires rigorous research and fact checking. Journalists in this field gather evidences, verify sources, and often spend months or even years before pursuing a single story. For example, think of the Watergate scandal. Led by journalists Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein, their work not only revealed the corruption within the Nixon administration, but also led to significant political consequences. Bringing up contemporary examples like the Panama Papers or the Me Too investigations add relevance to your essay. It shows that investigative journalism remains a powerful tool for exposing the truths regardless of the era. Next question here is that why is investigative journalism the oxygen of democracy? So firstly, because it promotes transparency and accountability in government and institutions. Investigative journalism shines a light on corruption and abuse, ensuring that those who are in power are accountable for their actions. It acts as a check on the authority, which is fundamental to the healthy democracy. It does so by uncovering critical information and it equips citizens with knowledge they need to make informed decision. This is essential during election, policy debates, and public decision-making processes. It also strengthens the foundation of democratic societies by exposing the wrongdoings of people who are in power. Linking the concept to the global indices like Press Freedom Index can even further strengthen your argument here. Like countries with higher ranking often have stronger democracies, and this illustrates the correlation between press freedom, particularly investigative journalism, and democratic health. Next question here is that what challenges does investigative journalism face? So the first up challenge is that political and corporate pressures continue to build up to suppress the critical stories that might hamper their image in public. Journalists even sometimes face legal threats or physical risks to their life if they're pursuing a particular story which is risky. Financial and resource constraints, again, in pursuing in-depth investigations is also one of a challenge that journalists face. For example, the murder of journalist Daphne Caruana in Malta highlighted the dangers faced by journalists in investigating corruption, while many newsrooms globally had to shut down their investigative units due to financial constraints. So, discuss the role of international organizations like Reporters Without Borders and Committee to Protect Journalists that monitor and advocate for the safety of journalists worldwide. Understanding these support systems adds depth to your analysis of the challenges. The last question here is, how can investigative journalism be protected? This can be done by ensuring press freedom and legal protection for the journalists. Legal frameworks that safeguard the freedom of the press are crucial. This includes laws that protect journalists from undue prosecution and guarantee their right to investigate public affairs without interference. Supporting independent journalism and fact-based reporting is also one aspect of it. So government, civil societies and international organizations must support independent journalism through grants or training programs and resources that allow media outlets to conduct in-depth reporting. Lastly, we could do is public awareness and interest in investigative stories. So, public interest in investigative stories ensure that there is a demand for such journalism. An informed and engaged public can create pressure for more transparency and support the work of journalists who bring important issues to the light. Take the example of success of platforms like ProPublica, which focuses on investigative journalism and funded by public contributions. It shows how model based on public support and independent funding can thrive even in the era of declining media revenues. Including examples of media literacy programs that educate the public on understanding and valuing investigative journalism. Countries that invest in media literacy often have more engaged citizens who recognize the importance of a free press, thereby creating a supportive environment for journalists. Let us now move to the next theme, that is, social media is an amplifier of human behavior. And with the right lens, it can be the mirror that reveals our anxieties. So social media as a powerful platform not only reflects but also intensifies human behavior and emotions. We'll explore how it amplifies the societal anxieties, the specific anxieties it magnifies, and how it can be used as a tool for self-reflection. So, how does social media amplify human behavior? It does so by exaggerating both negative and positive traits. It magnifies emotions, reactions, and behavior. It does so by creating a space where these behaviors are broadcasted and can be instantly reacted by a global audience. It also intensifies trends and behaviors and emotions in real time as information spreads very rapidly and trends gain momentum very quickly in the age of social media. This amplification effect means that minor incidents or behaviors can become a viral phenomena, sometimes even distorting their importance or relevance. For example, the way trends like viral challenges spread on platforms like TikTok shows how quickly behaviors can be adopted and magnified. What might begin as a small activity can become a worldwide phenomena in a matter of hours. Discussing the echo chamber effect of social media can add depth in this part, because platforms often show users content that aligns with their preferences, reinforcing their behaviors and views, making them feel amplified or validated. Including this perspective demonstrates an understanding of how digital algorithms contribute to the amplification of behavior. Next question is, how does social media reveal societal anxieties? So it does so by reflecting fears and insecurities which are prevalent in the society. Through posts, stories, and discussion, it showcases what people are worried about, whether it is their body image, the career success, or even their relationships. It also showcases collective concerns about self-worth, success, and validation, as these are recurring themes across various platforms. People often seek validation through likes, shares, and comments, which highlights a broader societal concerns around acceptance and approval. For instance, platforms like Instagram often emphasize visual aesthetics, leading people to post only the best aspect of their lives. This creates an environment where social validation is sought, reflecting anxieties about appearances, successes, and the social status of people. Referencing the concept of highlight reels on social media, where users only showcase the best part of their lives, can be effective here. This behavior highlights societal anxieties about comparison and perfectionism, showing how digital platforms reveal these pressures. Now, the next question is, what anxieties are most visible on social media? So, the most common anxiety include the fear of missing out. UPSC has already asked a question on social media FOMO this year itself. So FOMO is where individuals feel anxious when they see others enjoying experiences they are not a part of. This can lead to a constant need to stay updated and involved, often causing stress and dissatisfaction. Perfectionism and comparison here also fuels the tendency to compare oneself to others, creating unrealistic expectations around their lifestyle or achievements. People measure their self-worth based on these comparison, leading to the anxiety and self-doubt. Then there is also a strong desire for approvals and social validation. So the pursuit of likes and validation through comments can create pressure, where users feel they must present an ideal version of themselves to gain acceptance. For example, the prevalence of heavily filtered photos and curated content on platforms like Instagram illustrates the desire for perfection and approval, contributing to anxiety among users who feel they cannot live up to these standards. Connecting these anxieties to psychological concepts such as social comparison theory enriches your analysis. Understanding how humans naturally compare themselves to others helps explain why these platforms magnify such behavior, particularly when people feel validated or invalidated based on social media interactions. The next question here is that how does social media contribute to these anxieties? Social media often encourages constant comparison with others' curated lives. This pressure to keep up with what others are doing or achieving is intensified by the platform's design, which rewards engagement and visibility. It also promotes unrealistic standards and expectations, particularly when influencers and celebrities set trends that are often not attainable for an average user. This can create a cycle where people feel they must achieve or appear perfect for gaining social acceptance. For example, fitness and wellness trends promoted by influencers often showcase extreme lifestyles or diets that are not feasible for everybody. Now, this also leads to anxiety and a feeling of inadequacy among people. Bringing up the role of algorithms here can be an insightful thing to do, as these platforms are designed to maximize user engagement, often by showcasing content that triggers emotional responses. Understanding how these algorithms work can illustrate why social media is so effective at amplifying certain behaviors and emotions. Now, the last question here is that how can social media be used as a tool for reflection? Social media can be a mirror that fosters self-awareness by examining online behaviors if used mindfully. By observing our own behaviors and reactions online, we can gain insight into our own anxieties and insecurities. Reflecting why certain posts trigger specific emotions can be a way to understand the underlying concerns and address them constructively. It also offers an opportunity for identifying the anxiety it amplifies by examining online patterns and behaviors. For example, if one notices a tendency to seek validation through likes, it might prompt them to explore ways to build self-esteem outside the social validation. Digital wellness movements encourage users to limit their screen time, unfollow the accounts that trigger negative emotions, and curate a feed that promotes positivity and mental health awareness. These steps can transform social media from a source of anxiety to a tool for growth and reflection. Incorporating examples of mindful practices promoted through social media, like guided meditation accounts or mental health awareness pages, can show that the platform, when used intentionally, can provide tools for personal growth. Highlighting such examples offers a balanced view of social media's potential. Now, moving on to the next topic, that is media and literature are instruments that empower the powerless. This theme emphasizes the transformative power of media and literature in amplifying marginalized voices and challenges societal structures. So the first question here is that how do media and literature empower the powerless? It does so by amplifying voices of marginalized. Media and literature provide platforms for the underrepresented groups to share their stories, experiences, and struggle which might otherwise go unheard. It also highlights social injustices and inequalities. They expose the inequalities, human rights violations, and systematic problems, bringing attention to the issues that need societal and governmental intervention. It provides a platform for sharing stories. Through narratives and reporting, they give individuals the opportunity to express their realities and fight for their rights. For example, platforms like Humans of New York amplify personal stories that often reveal struggles of marginalized individuals, helping foster empathy and awareness among the global audience. Bringing up examples like the role of investigative journalism in uncovering the corruption, or literature such as a book To Kill a Mockingbird, which brought attention to the racial injustice, illustrates how media and literature have historically empowered marginalized voices. Including these references can make your essay more compelling and grounded in the real world examples. Moving on to the next question, that what role does literature play in giving power to the powerless? So it tells stories of resistance, survival, and resilience and strength. These stories serves as an inspiration and a source of solidarity for others in a similar situation. It also encourages empathy and understanding across diverse experiences. Literature builds empathy and understanding. It also allows individuals from different walks of life to relate to the struggles of others, fostering a more compassionate society as a whole. It also inspires movements and challenges the status quo. Many literary works have fueled social movements by challenging dominant narratives and urging readers to question societal norms. For instance, work by authors like George Orwell and Arundhati Roy criticize power structure and encourages readers to advocate for a change. Think of global impact of works like The Diary of Anne Frank or more contemporary novels like The Kite Runner, which brings the attention to the plight of individuals during war or under oppressive regimes. These works create awareness and spur action. Highlighting the role of poetry and non-fiction is also effective. Poetry often becomes the voice of resistance in oppressive contexts, while non-fiction brings a documented injustice into spotlight, driving public debate and change. Now, the next question here is, how does media contribute to the empowerment? So, the media does so by exposing corruption, oppression, and abuses of power. Media, especially through investigative journalism, as we discussed, plays a vital role in uncovering the misuse of power. By shedding light on wrongdoing, it holds leaders and institutions accountable. It also raises awareness of global issues and also provides visibility to the marginalized. The visibility often leads to the mobilization and activism. It provides real-time information. By delivering up-to-date information, media helps organize movements, rallies, and other forms of activism, allowing for swift and collective responses to the injustice. For example, the Arab Spring was heavily influenced by social media, where people shared real-time updates and organized protests against oppressive regimes. This example shows how media can mobilize the masses and push for a change. Exploring the role of digital media and citizen journalism, especially in countries with restricted press freedom, illustrate how even individuals with smartphones can act as journalists. Platforms like Twitter and YouTube have become essential tools for those seeking to expose injustices. Next question here is that why is this empowerment important? It is important because it challenges the dominant regime. Empowering marginalized voices through media and literature balances power dynamics and challenges the control of dominant group. It brings diverse perspectives into public discourse. Next up, it also fosters social change. By giving voice to those who are often silenced, media and literature create spaces for dialogue and action. They enable communication to demand rights, equality, and justice, and in turn driving progress. For example, movements like Black Lives Matter gained momentum through social media, which amplified the voices and stories of individuals affected by racial injustice, leading to policy decisions and societal change. Linking the empowerment to the idea of freedom of expression is being essential for a vibrant democracy can enhance your argument. Without such platforms for marginalized voices, societies risk becoming echo chambers where only dominant narratives thrive. So the last question here is that how can media and literature continue to empower? It could continue to empower by supporting diverse voices and independent platforms. It is essential to create and maintain independent media outlets for publishing platforms that are not influenced by corporate or political interests. This allows for diverse voices to emerge and be heard. Next up is that it also promotes media literacy and critical engagement with the content. This helps the public discern biased or harmful content, ensuring that media is used as a tool for empowerment rather than manipulation. It also encourages storytelling that reflects real struggle and experience, providing opportunities for the marginalized communities to tell their stories through books, films, blogs, or social media can help keep the focus on issues that need attention. Empowering these communities to become creators, not just subjects, builds a more inclusive narrative landscape. Initiatives like community radio stations or storytelling workshops in underprivileged areas are examples of how media and literature can remain accessible and inclusive, ensuring that they serve as instruments of empowerment. Here you can also discuss the role of international organizations like PEN International, which works to protect writers and journalists worldwide. Such organizations ensure that literature and media remain powerful tools for those without a voice, even in oppressive environments. Media and literature, when used intentionally, are powerful tools that can amplify the voices of those often silenced by societal structures. They not only highlight the injustice but also create a platform for advocacy and change. Ensuring that these platforms remain independent, inclusive, and accessible is a key to foster more just and equitable environment. Well, thank you for joining this session. I hope these insights empower you to approach these topics with a deeper understanding and a critical mind.